everybody, it is Dean Z here in my office today, which I will not be in too much longer because when we hire my replacement, that person will be sitting in this office and I will be moved to a corner of Dustin's cubicle. Yeah, that's the plan. No, that's not the plan. I don't know what's going to happen, but whatever. Here we are at the moment. I am giving the people what they want today. I keep getting people asking for application reads, and I'm going to kind of do that, but in a slightly different way than I have done in the past. I have picked a whole pile of people who applied very early, so timing could not be an issue. They are at or above both of our medians, and they got denied, not waitlisted, but denied, which means, now first of all I should say, lots of good people get denied when there is an application volume of more than 9,000. But the signal is, I don't think I can ever admit you. Whereas waitlist says, I may not be able to admit you right now, but I'd be very interested in admitting you later. So getting denied when you're at or above both medians is a pretty strong signal something went wrong in your application, at least from my point of view. So I'm going to go through these. There's a lot of people who fall in this category. It's not just this group of people. I picked ones that I thought had mistakes in them that were not just one-offs and that might illustrate something a little larger. And I want to say, I'm going to try to remember to say this at the end too, but what I want to say at the beginning is these are all mistakes that could be avoided. One of the things, doing this exercise, I read about 50 different applications trying to pick out the best ones. And one of the things I came away really feeling strongly is most of your application is sort of written in stone. You have the grades that you have the LSAT score that you have, the people who are your recommenders. You can have a little bit of leeway there who you're going to pick, but what they write is outside your control. So a lot of your application is outside your control. Everything that went wrong in with these applicants is the things that are within an applicant's control. So it's all fixable. So I hope that will make this very useful. All right, let's just get started with the first one. All right, so this is someone who had he took the LSAT 3 times, had a pretty good score, took it again, got a 172, took it again, went back to the original score. So that is, I just want to point that out because I say over and over, once you get a really good score, once you're in the 170s, the mathematical chances that you go down instead of up it's like 50-50. So think carefully before you take it. Now, that did not hurt him. That is not part of why I did not want to admit him, but I am just pointing that out. And this is someone who also graduated in 2026. So it's someone who, in the parlance of y'all, it's a K to JD candidate. All right. So the main problem with this application was that it was just an extremely low effort application is what my first readers usually say. Very low effort when they find an application like this. So the resume itself is fine, actually decent resume in terms of substance for someone who's just now graduating from college, but starts with a summary of qualifications, which aimed at getting a job. That's just lazy, right? You need to do a new resume for law school applications that is not the same as your resume for getting a job. Resumes for applications should not have a summary of your qualifications at the top. You just dive right in with your education and then your work history. Decent work experience, although I suspect things are left off. It shows 3 jobs, and then has a whole big paragraph called skills, all of which are just standard issue things you develop in college. So a very big section on drafting and editing, which basically talks about all the kinds of things he wrote in college. So there's a term that we learn in law school in contracts called puffery, which is when you are, you're not really lying, you're just kind of puffing yourself up. And so this is a lot of puffery. Like there's not a lot of substance to this half page about skills. The skills themselves are fine to list, but I didn't need, each of them has a paragraph explanation, which is kind of a waste of space. Now, maybe the issue here is this person just didn't have enough to say, but I would have been, they list no extracurricular activities, no volunteer work, nothing like that. And, maybe there wasn't any, but most people have something, right? So it just feels like a resume into which not much thought was put. And then at the end, it lists 2 awards, and I'll just say, if you have an award, it is nice if you can tell me like 3 words about what the heck the award is for. It just gives me the name of like some donor who named the award, and I don't know what it's for. So, again, a little more effort thinking about it from the point of view of someone who does not know your college and does not know the awards that they give out could have been very useful. And then the personal statement, a page and a half, and that's it. No optional essays, nothing else. And the essay itself, not great. It starts out with, it's 4 paragraphs. 2 paragraphs are what my first years like to call a work hero essay, which is someone who tells something that happened at work where they are the hero, they saved the day. Those tend to be not great essays because when they get the work hero designation from the readers, it means you haven't talked about anybody else doing anything. It's like you are the only person who did anything, and it makes it sound like you're arrogant, frankly. So it's 2 paragraphs of a work hero essay where the heroism is not anything really that interesting, and then it moves to then it moves to a description of his major. And talks about one particular paper, which has nothing to do with the work situation. It's just like a whole new topic. And then at the end, he says, I want to be a lawyer. And that's it. It's like, this is something that got tossed off, I think, in 2 minutes. And not much thought was put into what am I trying to convey here. So, didn't get in. All right, next one. This is another fairly recent grad, although not a 26 grad, it's a December 25 grad. And I have to say, she has a pretty darn good resume for someone graduating in December 25 in terms of, like, has a fair amount of content on it, has worked in an office, at a couple different periods, a law office, so that's really good, did another internship not in a law office, but sort of in a law adjacent type of field. So I feel like, and lists, a fair number of activities and interests. So the resume itself, everything is looking pretty good. And even I just noticed that I won't specify what it is because it's so unusual that I think it would, be easy maybe to find this person. But I had a particular volunteer activity that is really unusual, and I found kind of captivating. So, all right, so we're going through the application, and all the way until the resume, things are looking great. I should say, to the numbers here, LSAT, 1 time, 177, and GPA above 4 point. So, extremely impressive scores. Everything falls apart at the essay. 2 essays for this candidate. So first, the personal statement the applicant had a medical issue during their first year of college. I do not mean to in any way minimize what it is like to have a medical issue, when you are in college. But it was not a life-threatening medical issue. It was not something that was going to affect their life forever. It did require a medical procedure, and then it required afterwards that this person, I want to explain this in a sort of general way, had to use a medical device. So think arm brace or walker or something like that, right? Like they have to use a medical device that is obvious to others. it was written with so much drama. You know, I think the topic is fine. Like, you could take this topic, you just have to have some perspective on the seriousness of this topic. So she says, she starts her essay by saying, "Little did I know that after just one semester of college, I would face adversity so great, it would fundamentally shape my identity and help me find my voice, colon," and then she names the medical device, like the walker or the crutches, right, in capital letters. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't, I mean, I'm speaking as someone who's actually had to use the medical device in question, also in college, and it's just not speaking to me. So it goes on, and talks just in the most high-flown terms about how hard this was. So, a nightmare I had never imagined became my reality. Let's see if I can pick out another couple things. Oh, and then she talks about how she was hiding herself away because of her embarrassment about this medical device. And then someone said, "You should come to a party." And she said no. And then they said, "No, you should really come." And then that was it. That's all it took to break her out of her shell, and not let this medical device hold her back. And that's the whole essay. This does not really tell me anything interesting about her. It has taken a fairly, I don't know what the point is of telling me about this, honestly. Like, it doesn't show me anything really about her development. And it is, as I say, talked about way out of proportion to the actual adversity that it was. So, not a great topic. It makes her sound like someone who is quite young and hasn't had enough life experience to have a sense of the seriousness of various issues. So, and then the next essay, the optional essay, is about arguing about politics with her father. As someone who spent many, many years arguing about politics with my father, I get it. It's whatever. It was a big thing. But it does make you sound young, right? Like if this is your frame of reference, like your parents, you don't sound like someone who is ready to go around representing clients because you're still thinking about your relationship with your parents, which is not to say that you're not going to be thinking about your relationship with your parents, possibly for your entire life, but you don't want it to seem like this is the focus of everything for you. You want to present yourself as a fully fledged adult person who's ready to help other people, which is what this career is about. Again, denied. Next, okay, this one is one we really didn't like. It was the first time, he took the LSAT twice, high of 174, went up a lot of points the first time he took it. He said he didn't really want to go to law school at that time, so, and that's the thing, I get that. Neither here nor there, just 174. And then above a 3.9. Graduated in 2025. So we're looking to see, a year of what has this person been doing since graduation. Also, first gen, like to see that. So everything's looking pretty good from the outset. But there's no work experience, like that. We don't know what the person is doing currently. And then, although, wait, there's a postscript to that, but my first reader did not understand what the person was doing currently. And the essays are problematic. So here's what's going on with what they're doing currently. They had made a commitment to a program, a 2-year program that involved service to others, right? And they'd made that commitment, and that was what they presumably were going to be doing during this year. But then they reneged on it. They decided, and for not great reasons. They wanted to be with family, and they decided that the service itself was no longer of value, like not the kind of service they want to be involved in. They feel like they do better at a different kind of service. And just to be clear, it's not like they had it's not like it was a cause that they no longer believed in. It's not like they were like, oh, now I see, like say they were going to be a missionary and they lost their faith. It's not like that. It's just like, I don't like doing that particular kind of task. I prefer doing this kind of task, and I think I'm better at this task. But they made a commitment and they walked away from it. So that is, I would not highlight that. And that was the theme of the personal statement. No, I'm sorry, that's the theme of one of the optional essays. The theme of the personal statement is all about their experimentation with religion. Started out in one religion, went through several others, and then came back to their original religion over a fairly short period of time. Unclear what the point of this story is. I mean, I can imagine it would be an interesting story if a friend was telling it to you about, like, oh, here's, like, I started out in this, and then I did this, that, and the other thing, and, like, you'd get to know the person better in some way. But, like, for a law school point of view, like, I don't understand what he wants me to take away from that essay that speaks to his capacity or fitness for going to law school. So that's the personal statement. And then the optional essay is all about, you know, why he walked away from the service commitment. And it's not a good explanation, and it honestly doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, I feel like I'm just not following it, so that's a problem. And then I also mentioned that one of my first readers didn't think he was currently employed, and that is because the way he has structured his resume is very confusing. It starts out with jobs that were finished a couple years before he even graduated from college, and then it talks about his leadership in a club in college, which I want to say has this much space, which, you know, that's more space than you should give to, you know, a leadership role in a club. With 5 bullet points telling me what you did. I don't need that much explanation for that. And then 1 volunteer experience from high school, had to do the math there. And then it gets to what he calls current activities, and it is a job that ended before the service commitment. And then at the very, very end, it says, I will be living at home and working, basically, in a store, like sort of, a money-making kind of position. Doesn't really give me any details there. That's what you're doing now, and you haven't even told me where you're working. Great, it just, what? Why are you burying that? That's, it really highlights the fact that he had the service commitment that he left too, like the way he structured it. So. Didn't get in. All right. So I'm already at 20 minutes here, and I feel that is enough to lay on you for one. We'll do this again, maybe right as soon as I'm finished making this. We're going to keep filming. But before we do that, let's talk grammar. Less and fewer. I looked it up, and it does not look like I ever talked about less and fewer, which is weird because I'm sort of obsessed with less and fewer and the difference between them. So less applies when you're talking about something which you cannot individually you cannot individually count. So I am less happy today than I was yesterday. That's not true. I'm perfectly happy, but you don't say I have less M&Ms than my friend Dustin. You say because when you have something that you can count, like M&Ms, which are delicious, you say fewer. So I have fewer M&Ms than Dustin, but I am less happy than I was yesterday. Okay? And so when you are in a supermarket and you say that it says 10 items or less, you should immediately walk up to the manager of the supermarket and correct their grammar, because it should be 10 items or fewer. And may I say, in Ann Arbor, my regular grocery store, it says 10 items or fewer. And that's the Michigan difference, baby, right there. Okay? So, yeah. So there you go. That's important. All right. Thanks, as always, for watching. I hope this was interesting and enjoyable. And thanks to Dustin, who is wearing, may I say, a very unusual shirt today. It's, it's kind of a vacation shirt, but he's about to go on vacation, so that makes sense. In any event, wherever you go, go blue.